There are movies with twist endings. Movies with terrible endings that make no damn sense. Movies with terrific and sensical endings. Then you get stuff like this. They're not necessarily bad, right? I mean, they catch us off guard as audience members, but weird movie endings mean something different to me. They can be good, they can be bad. What they really represent to me is a jarring shift from what came before. If the movie that came before the ending is already weird, yeah, the ending might be a strange concoction of weird things. The ending to a weird movie would be really weird if it ended in a normal, cinematic way.
Fuck you, lady!
Let's explore some good movie endings, bad movie endings, further define a weird movie ending, and explore some of those as well. As you can probably tell, there will be a ton of spoilers throughout this video. Good movies are so subjective, if you ask the viewer, not the critic. Don't ask this guy. No matter what, you are wrong. All art is subjective, so when I'm defining a good ending, it really just means a fitting ending to a movie that I really like. Let's use the film Good Time as our example. To define a good ending, let's talk about how it should fit into the film. In order for an ending to be good, it needs to at least be hinted at earlier in the film. If it just comes out of nowhere, it feels cheap and or lazy. I'll get to an example of this kind of bad ending later. That's why some twist endings don't really cut it for me. Having a twist just for the sake of having a twist just rubs me the wrong way. They end up being predictable, especially when a specific director is known for twist endings and he has to pigeonhole all of his movies into that same category. Predictable doesn't necessarily mean bad, but you get the point. In addition to hinting towards the ending, other things that make a good ending are the climactic combination of themes and tone, and things such as acting, cinematography, and the care put into crafting the actual story. In Good Time, there are a myriad of subtle hints towards the ending. Early in the film, Nick, the main character Connie's brother, is seeing a court-ordered therapist. During his session, various phrases are used, such as, "It's the squeaky wheel that gets the grease." Interesting. The film ends with Connie going to prison, concluding his psychedelic odyssey across New York, and Nick gets the help that he needs. We see throughout the film that Nick relies on Connie, who is a terrible role model for Nick. He's the reason why Nick gets arrested earlier in the film, sparking the aforementioned odyssey. An ending with an impact that drives the themes home gets 2 big thumbs up from me. Straying or even flipping the themes on their head at the end isn't a bad thing at all. Consistency across the board is usually important, but rules are made to be broken. Just ask the Coen brothers, they break almost every filmmaking rule out there, yet still produce some of the best films ever made. Yet, tonal shifts are awkward most times, which is why the meshing of themes and tone is so important. Good Time does this beautifully. Not only is it stressful from beginning to end, which I absolutely love, but it also gives off a grimy and seedy tone. The portrayal of the setting is not romanticized in the slightest, which makes everything feel so real. Especially since the themes revolve around desperation, toxicity, and justice. These all come to a head when the root cause, Connie, is arrested. The whole time, Connie feels like a wild animal who would do anything for survival. Wooing an underage girl just to distract her, attempting to break his brother out of prison, getting his brother pulled from therapy because he wants all of the control. Finally, the wild animal is caged in the end. Literally. These cinematic things like acting, cinematography, and story are all pretty self-explanatory. If the acting's good, it helps the ending. If there is thought put into the shot composition and editing, it helps the ending. If it's bad, then the ending is nowhere near as effective as it could be. Let's talk about bad movie endings. This isn't a roast, and I'm not taking the mickey out of these films, although it would be so much fun.
Shut up!
I simply want to define a bad movie ending, which is basically the inverse of a good movie. There's so many films I could use to exemplify a bad ending, so I just decided on 2. Remember Me and Oldboy 2013. Remember Me is an example of a terrible twist ending. The ending is basically Robert Pattinson dying on 9/11. Surely this movie has something to do with 9/11 early on. No, not even a little bit. The ending is a cop-out where the character just happens to be at the World Trade Center on September 11th, 2001. What the hell? Who thought this was a good idea? It makes no sense in the context of the movie. There's no build-up, no hinting at it. It just happens. It also requires prior knowledge on what 9/11 is. Most people know, but some don't. In this case, the ending means absolutely nothing. Oldboy. Not the good one, mind you. This is the bad one. I want to tear this movie to shreds, but YMS already did that. I also won't compare the two. YMS did that also. So let's just take a minute and think about what Spike Lee was thinking. So the main character, Joe, is imprisoned in a makeshift prison for 20 years. He is suddenly released and must figure out why he was imprisoned. He meets this girl with whom he does the hanky-panky, but spoiler alert, it's his daughter. The man who imprisoned Joe was some kid he knew in school who had a large incestuous relationship with his family. The ending is Joe figuring all of this out and imprisoning himself back in the makeshift prison because he doesn't want the secret to come out. Okay, I mean, needless, don't you think? He didn't have to do that in the slightest. The film's about sacrifices, sure, but he could have done any number of things over imprisoning himself again. Am I wrong here? It just feels cheap, right? Weird movie endings aren't exactly rare. I see them a lot with the Coen brothers. A Serious Man and Burn After Reading have very bizarre endings that feel wholly unique. In addition, Green Room, directed by Jeremy Saulnier, has a similarly strange ending. Weird endings just feel unnatural, which can be hard to describe. There's an accumulation of weirdness that can preface the ending, like in Burn After Reading. That makes the ending consistent with the rest of the film, which isn't the reason for its weirdness. I think Burn After Reading has a kind of bizarre interpretation of a twist ending. The plot is rather dense, with many different characters, but I'll try and streamline it right here the best I can. A CIA analyst quits his job, which leads to his wife pursuing divorce.
I want a divorce.
He's working on a novel, and his notes are accidentally acquired by people who work at a local gym. They think it's classified documents, so they attempt to blackmail the analyst for money. So much happens, but ultimately one of the gym workers is abruptly shot in the head with Chekhov's gun, which is mentioned only twice in the entire movie.
If you want, he'll show you his great big gun.
Not very funny. Gun's no big deal. 20 years in marshal service, I never discharged my weapon. Not so much PP, personal protection. I do still carry the gun.
Oh my God.
No big deal. Never discharged it in 20 years of service.
The sequence of events makes this ending bizarre. Bumbling idiots stumbling where they shouldn't, basically. There's almost no true resolution, but it doesn't feel like they cheated us out of a proper ending. The whole thing just kind of fizzles out. We learn information through secondary characters about what happens to the main characters, but we actually don't see what happens next. It doesn't feel like the Coens forgot about anybody while writing, they just refocused our attention to the fact that these people's lives ultimately mean nothing. Not to get too misanthropic, but their lives are their own and they're not ours. They're insinuating that this weird stuff happens all the time and we just get smacked with a perspective adjustment at the end. It shows us that anything can happen, but it ultimately doesn't matter. It will be forgotten or swept under the rug. A Serious Man gives off similar vibes at its conclusion. Understanding the subject matter helps make sense of the film. It's based on the story of Job, a man featured in the Old Testament whose life is upended time after time by disaster. In A Serious Man, the same thing happens to Larry Gopnik, our main character. As things get worse and worse, from small things to his wife wanting a divorce, it all accumulates to nothing. This movie too just fizzles out. There are assumptions we're left with as viewers, but that's really all we have to go off of. As Larry's son stands behind the school, waiting for the tornado shelter to be unlocked, a huge tornado forms right in front of him. I mean, if this were the actual biblical story, that kid would be fucking dead. Larry also receives a call from his doctor who wants to go over potential cancer results in person. Due to the terrible things common in this film, it isn't wrong to assume that the kid dies and Larry has cancer. But much like Schrodinger's cat, a theme brought up earlier in the movie, we simply do not know. Both of these characters are simultaneously alive and dead as the movie ends. Using physics concepts combined with biblical stories is such a Coen Brothers thing to do, and it's so weird. The last movie I want to talk about is Green Room. Jeremy knocked it out of the park with this one. Super violent and gritty. A punk rock band is locked in the green room at a skinhead bar after they witness a murder. They need to get out or die. The head honcho of the skinhead bar, Darcy, is one mean bastard who meticulously plans every move on how the skinheads are going to dispatch the band.
He's a really bad guy.
The ending flips all of the characters on their head, which leads to the characters acting in such strange ways. Darcy, who is meticulous from beginning to end, has a sort of fuck it moment and casually walks away when the band draws guns on him. He did not see this coming, so he acts out of character. They of course then just shoot Darcy and he dies. Even the fight dogs have characterization flips at the end. What does this all mean? Weird endings are just my interpretation of something different happening in a film, usually under bizarre circumstances or just playing with the story a bit. They can range from good to bad to just somewhere in the middle. There are plenty of them out there, you just need to take the time and find them. Thanks for watching, and see ya.